Are you ready to rock out with Teaser Talk? A podcast full of music, fashion, humor, and randomness. Here are your hosts, Donna and Holly.
We hope you're having the most rad day ever. Holly here with another kick-ass podcast for Teaser Talk. Unfortunately, Donna is out today, so I hope I hold down the fort on this last 2017 episode, which is our season finale. So we've had a great 2017, and we appreciate everyone who has tuned in and been a part of it, all of the artists, all the fans, everybody that has supported us. So shout out to you guys. You guys are awesome. So this is, like I said, our last episode for 2017. We figured we would celebrate the best way possible, have Halloween on Christmas, or like 4 days after Christmas, but whatever. So we survived the holidays. Apparently you have too if you're listening to this, but some weren't so lucky. And here we have some holiday horror stories for you. Countless millions of Americans happily celebrated Christmas this year. But for some, psycho slayers, anti-Mary murderers consider December 25th just another day on the calendar to kill. So let's just jump into some of these murders, and it's just interesting to see how people can be so gruesome. I mean, it's super sad, but at the same time, it's one of those interesting things to kind of be alerted about, right? So let's talk about Ronald Gene Simmons' murder spree. 3 days before Christmas in 1987, the retired Air Force Sergeant Ronald Gene Simmons embarked on a week-long murder spree where he killed 16 people. The murders had begun on December 22nd when Gene had shot and killed his wife and son with a .22 caliber pistol. Then he strangled his 3-year-old granddaughter. 4 more of his kids had arrived at the home with their belief that their father would be giving them gifts. Instead, he strangled and drowned each one of them in a rain barrel. On December 26th, the rest of the Gene's family had arrived for Christmas celebrations. Simmons had shot his son and his daughter-in-law before drowning their 20-month-old son. Then he had killed his older daughter, whom he had fathered with his child, who he had a child with her. Like, what a sicko. Their children, Simmons lined the bodies up, the loved ones, neatly in his home and proceeded to eat and drink and watch television like normal. 2 days later, he shot a woman who had rejected him and then murdered 2 more people that had disgruntled his feelings, or that he had disgruntled feelings for. At the end of the whole ordeal, Simmons simply surrendered to the police. He was put to death by lethal injection in 1990. Man, like, that's just messed up. Like, children, I don't know how people can do that. Whew. Okay, so let's move on to the Carnation murders. On Christmas Eve in 2007, Michelle Anderson and her boyfriend, Joseph McEnroe, murdered her family. The deranged duo arrived in Carnation, Washington, home of her parents in the afternoon. In the afternoon, they had shot her father and mother as they prepared for Christmas. The couple hid the bodies and awaited for Anderson's brother, his wife, and 2 young children, ages 3 and 5, to arrive. When they showed up, all 4 family members were shot and killed. Anderson is believed to have come up with a murder plan because she believed she was abused by her parents and her brother, and that they owed her money. He confessed to the murders, and was sent to prison in 2015. Anderson was sentenced to life in prison in 2016. Man, again with these kids, it's just crazy. Christmas time is not supposed to be like this. Okay, the Lawson family murder. It was December 25th, 1929, in one North Carolina family had woke up on Christmas, blissfully unaware that their father had a murder on his mind. On that fateful day, tobacco farmer Charles Davis Lawson, 43, killed his wife and shot 6 of his 7 kids before taking his own life. Over the years, the massacre had mystified residents to the town, and experts still wonder what was the motive. Lawson's early life appeared nothing to be out of the ordinary. He was born in 1886 in the town of Lawsonville, married Fanny Manring in 1911, and they had 8 children, including one who had died from pneumonia. In 1927, he had bought a plot of land, which had included a 200-year-old farmhouse. By all accounts, he seemed to have settled into a quiet life with his family until the day of the killings. M. Bruce Jones and Trudy J. Smith wrote White Christmas, Bloody Christmas. and that they believe that Lawson's problems started with him accidentally striking himself in the forehead with an axe while doing work. After that, the authors wrote, his temper became more violent. Another theory was that Lawson had sexually abused his 17-year-old daughter Marie. In 1990, he wrote a book was published in which Stella Lawson Bowles, a cousin of Lawson's, confessed that she had overheard her mother and other women talking at the funeral about how Fanny had confided in them, and that she had discovered the incest in her family between Charlie and Marie. It was alleged that Marie had confided in her friend Ella Mae Johnson, telling her she was pregnant with her father's baby. 2 weeks before Christmas, Lawson had brought his family expensive new clothes, had them sit down for a Christmas portrait. This was considered a very unusual thing for the working class family, many whom never had any photographs of themselves made at that time. On Christmas morning, he and his elder son Arthur, who was 16, went out hunting. After sending out the teen to buy more ammunition, Lawson then systematically executed the 6 other children: Carrie, 12, Marybelle, 7, James, 4, Raymond, 2, Marie, 17, and the 4-month-old Mary Lou, and then fatally shot his wife, Fanny, on the front porch. As he slayed each member, he lay them with their arms crossed, and some accounts say that he put stones over their eyes. Carrie and Marybelle were the first to die, followed by Fanny. Lawson then came into the house, shot Marie. Then he found her two younger brothers, James and Raymond, who had ran and hide, and he killed them too. Finally, he bludgeoned baby Mary Lou, whose cause of death was a fractured skull. After the bodies were found, the police had arrived at the scene. Lawson reportedly ran into the woods and shot himself. Only Arthur survived, although he was to perish 15 years later in a freak car accident. The entire family was buried at the single plot, but the scene of the crime continued to attract so many visitors, and that one of the brothers decided to charge 25-cent admission fee. A Christmas cake that Mary was baking at the time of the murders even became a star of the attraction in carnival sideshows. It had been kept under glass around souvenir hunters swiped raisins off of it. When the tours had ended 5 years later, one of the Lawson's relatives took the cake home and eventually buried it. Man, that's crazy. It almost reminds me of the Amityville horror movie, and then also the twist at the end with it being the carnival sideshows. I don't know if anybody has seen The Greatest Showman, but side note from these murders is, man, that's a good movie. Go out and watch it if you haven't watched it. I just love the creativity and how people can go out and be so, innovators, and just has a good story behind it. So there you go. There's your hidden gem in this podcast episode. You guys need to go watch that movie. Okay, on to our next one. We have the famous murder of JonBenet Ramsey. So I'm sure, like any of you guys listening to this, you guys have heard of this, but here's just a trip down memory lane. The Ramsey family lived an idyllic life with their children in the picturesque community of Boulder, Colorado, where crime was very uncommon. However, in 1996, Boulder was rocked with one of the most shocking crimes of the decade: the murder of a 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey on Christmas. The young girl was reported missing by her parents upon the discovery of a ransom letter was placed on the staircase of her home. Hours after her disappearance, her father John had discovered her lifeless body covered in a blanket in the wine cellar. JonBenet had a cord around her neck, her hands were tied above her head, and she had duct tape across her mouth. The cause of death was strangulation and head trauma. Controversy surrounds the case of the young girl who was paraded around in beauty pageants and partook in risque photo shoots, initially placing blame on her parents and younger brother. However, the family was eventually cleared of the murder, and to this day, the case remains unsolved. Which is crazy. You think with all of the science and all of, with everything available, that this stuff would be, easily solved. But I remember that the crime scene was not secured and people were going in and out. It's just, I don't know, super sad. Okay, so let's go on to our next one. So this is intriguing to me because, it comes involving, blood, thinking about vampires. And it's true, so it's just kind of what the hell? So, the 16th and 17th century misdeeds of a noblewoman who was indeed born in Transylvania, seemed so fantastically fiendish that it would only exist in the realm of fiction. At last, the Countess's indulgences proved all too true. Her crimes had came to light on December 26, 1609. So between 1585 and the moment of her downfall, Bathory is believed to be abducted, jailed, savaged, sexually violated, and ultimately murdering literally hundreds of young female virgins over the area of which her family had ruled. Most notoriously, it is thought she had bathed in the blood of her victims as part of a ritual that she would think that it would maintain her youth and beauty. Prior to the discovery, the Countess's reputation had grew quickly and fearsomely among her subjects. After years of the teenage girls going missing, the terrified talk and frantic warnings among the common people grew too loud to simply ignore. A Lutheran minister publicly appeared to the royalty for something had to be done. Still, the king didn't order an investigation until Bathory's hitchman had ran through the common people and reported plucking off daughters of the rich and powerful. So they took the case and made the haste to Bathory's residence, to the castle. The day after Christmas, he and his battalion reportedly bust into the Countess's mid-torture session and witnessed her subjecting youthful captives in unspeakable agonies. The hammer of justice came down fast. So they arrested the Countess and all of her people that were involved. His soldiers rounded up torture devices, manipulated corpse remains, bones, and other evidence that Bathory's dastardly doings. The bust resulted in Bathory facing 80 individual charges of murder. After the trial, the court had judged all involved to be guilty. Elizabeth Bathory was sentenced to life in solitary confinement, where she walled up a room in the castle. One hole in the bricks provided air. The other one was used to slide food in and out. She lasted 3 years before expiring. Although the court could only prove 80 killings, oh my gosh, my Oklahoma accent's coming out. Some reports list the number of Bathory's casualties was as high as 650, even the lowest to be in the deep 3 digits. No matter what the actual tally was, Countess's crime immediately became stuff nightmares and legends are made of. In cultures low and high, she continues to both repel and fascinate, especially in regard to the details spilled forth during her trial and after her death. After her arrest, Countess Bathory's closet associates and collaborators in the kidnappings and the defilement of virgin girls were said to be her nurse, who was a self-described witch named Dorita. She also supposedly had a male lover called Ironhead John. Among the specific outrages which the court did charge Bathory was with the practice of forcing girls to cut off and cook their own flesh, which is crazy. That was to be served to guests and other prisoners, and even eaten by the victims themselves. In addition, Bathory was said to cover herself nude in honey, in which she let them tied outdoors and be eaten by insect. Oh my gosh, what the hell? This girl's brutal. No matter what, though, Countess Elizabeth Bathory has become to loom as one of the age's most notorious monsters, an inhumane intersection where history meets horror and creates an opportunity to meditate upon the vast hideousness that human beings are capable of inflicting upon one another. Man, that's just crazy. So, I hope you guys enjoyed those holiday horror stories. I would like to hear what's most disturbing for you guys. Me personally, I mean, they're all sick, but most disturbing to me, I think, is just seeing how people can just do, kill and injure children. I mean, obviously anybody's sad, but kids, they're not even enough to defend themselves. That's just sick. I think that's most disturbing. And if you guys have any holiday horror stories, obviously, hopefully they're not including murders, but even if it's, whatever, like traumatic ways you found out that Santa wasn't real. I haven't had anything close to that, thank goodness, but Interesting fact is I had found out Santa Claus wasn't real. I was about 6 years old, and my brother was trying to get me to come outside with him to take out the trash. And I'm like, dude, you're stupid. Like, I'm not going to take out your trash. He's like, no, I got something to show you. So then he brings me out to my mom's trunk, and she drove like one of those boat, like Lincoln cars. So he opens the trunk, and there were so many presents. I remember like so many stuffed animals, like little knick-knack stuff. And I was like, what is this? He goes, this is Santa. Mom's Santa. Like, Santa's not real. And I was like, what are you talking about? So he's like, like Mom's Santa. Like, this is our Santa gifts. So I remember I looked there quickly and I was like, okay, I want this. I want that. I want this. So I wasn't very smart. And I ran in there and I was like, hey, Mom, you know what I really want for Christmas? And she was like, what? I said, I just wish Santa would bring me like a talking wolf dog. I think it was like a wolf puppy or something. She was like, oh, okay. Have you been out my trunk? And I'm like, no, why? Do I need to go get something? She's like, no. So I was almost busted out there. But then my brother and sister, we was always having we're having like these little wars between each other. And they decided to gang up on me that night. And I was mad. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to tell Mom that you told me that Santa Claus wasn't real. So my brother and sister insisted me not to tell my mom that, because if I had to tell my mom that, then that means Santa would be stopping any other times in the future. So they took me and they tied me up and they stuffed dirty socks. I'm talking about dirty socks in my mouth. And they put me in this chest, like, you have at the end of your bed. My sister had one, and I could still smell the cedar to this day. Tied me up and put me in there so that I wouldn't tell my mom what David had told me. So then my mom's calling for me, and my brother, made, this girly, I'm playing, I'll come in a little bit, or something like that. My mom believed it until finally she found me tied up, and that's when I definitely busted my brother out. So there's my traumatic holiday horror story. Anyways, you guys, hit us up on Instagram, hit us up on Twitter. Our Instagram handle is the best, which is @TeasersTalk. We are here. This is the closing of our first season. So this was our season finale. We can't wait to get back and give you guys more content and more interviews and more kick-ass stuff. So until then, you guys, keep rocking, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to Teaser Talk. For topic requests and to connect with the hosts, follow @talk_2_teaser on Twitter. Keep rocking.